All right. Hello and welcome to a new year and a new episode of the Footnotes to Endnotes podcast. My name is Uriah Mark Todorov, aka The Inverted Form.
And my name is Owen Gilbride, aka the Owented Gil from. I'm sorry. Welcome to the very first episode we've recorded this year. We have not recorded anything in recent days at all. So we've been away for a few weeks. So we're rusty AF.
Yeah, you might notice some difference in the audio fidelity here. It's because my standard usual microphone broke for some reason, unbeknownst to me. And the last episode that we recorded had to be scrapped for that reason. But, you know, we're here with a new episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the editorial of Endnotes 4. We are finally beginning the fourth volume of the Endnotes journal. And we're also going to be spending, before we get into that, we're going to be spending some time talking a little bit about the podcast itself. And, you know, it's a new year, so we're going to be, you know, talking about what we hope to accomplish this year, what our New Year's podcast resolutions are, and, you know, what we're trying to do here, and how we see the podcast going forward, because I expect us to finish both Volume 4 as well as Volume 5 in 2021. Probably won't take too long. I think I counted, we're anticipating about 8 episodes for Endnotes number 4, and you know, probably a similar amount of episodes for Endnotes 5. So that'll be, you know, maybe 6 months tops before we are through the Endnotes corpus, at which point, you know, we'll have to think about what the show will be going forward. But before we get into that, Owen, how are you doing? How's your holidays been?
My holidays have been pretty good. I've been in my apartment in Montreal, Canada, self-doxing. Yeah, the lockdown is still ongoing. The coronavirus has now been a reality for almost a year. It's like 10 months and change at this point, I think, that it's been on the public radar. And Montreal remains apparently one of the worst hit places in the world. So there's a lockdown. All unessential businesses are closed down. They discouraged anyone from traveling for the holidays. So I did not go back to my home territory in Eastern Canada. So yeah, that's all interesting. I think, you know, looking at this on a broader scale, the last year has certainly been, well, I mean, you all lived through it. There's no need to dwell on it. I'm not really a doomer about 2020. I know that was kind of a popular sentiment, was like, oh, the world's ending. I'm actually pretty optimistic. I think the world's changing, but like it was kind of long overdue. But all that being said, like we're in the early days of 2021. I have no idea what to expect in terms of my own personal life or in terms of like what's going to happen. I'm not even entirely confident who's going to be the president in like a week. So like, yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive, but I'm like cautiously optimistic.
I saw a few viral tweets about how like certain, you know, all non-essential businesses in Montreal are shut down, and even at the essential businesses like pharmacies and whatnot, I saw some photos of like the non-essential sections being like taped off so that you could really only go there for like, you know, whatever they deem to be essential. They seem to be really heavily policing people's activities, and I don't know, the lockdown in Montreal seems to be very extreme.
Yeah, it's a weird, like I've basically just been going out to like grocery stores and before, like, things have definitely gotten more extreme in the last few weeks, because before I was like going to bookstores occasionally. Now I'm relying pretty heavily on PDFs. But yeah, when you go out on the streets, it's pretty empty out there. Like, I think there's like less of a feeling of fear in the air than there was last March. Like, I think back in March, there was a lot of people that were like legitimately scared that they were all just about to die from coronavirus. And like, that hasn't really happened yet. Like, if it has the potential to be that deadly, it hasn't gotten that deadly yet. So I think people are less scared now, but there is kind of this recognition that like, oh, this isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah, it's certainly not.
So,
It's
yeah.
going to be with us for 10 years at least. That is what I've
Oh
heard.
my gosh.
And the
Oh,
vaccinations are like, I don't know, the complete, I mean, not a complete sham, but they are, largely a plot on the part of big pharma to, make
yeah.
money. Like they've only gone through like 2 rounds of testing, and um, they're only going to be like giving out, 1 round of vaccines, which are generally um, supposed to be about like 50% like guaranteed or whatever of inoculating you against the virus. You need 2 rounds in order to get to that 95% level. But in terms of like efficiency on like a population kind of scale, they're going to be I don't know, some governments, this is what I've heard, are going to only be giving out 1 round of vaccines. Whatever, this is not a coronavirus show. I don't know anything about it. I'm certainly no expert. This is just what I've heard, but it's going to be with us for
Mm.
some time. And I am here in rainy Vancouver, North Vancouver. I fled Montreal like a coward before the winter even hit, and I feel very fortunate to be here. I mean, there are like extenuating circumstances for why I need to be here, um, that I won't get into. But I feel like very, very blessed to not be in
Going to
Montreal.
the
Both,
gym
both,
on the
yeah.
regular.
The gym is still open. Um, I don't really do anything besides go to the gym, which is like 5 minutes from my house, and go to the grocery store. Um, but yeah, it's certainly like a blessing. Like I'm able to like skip out on winter. The days are longer. There's more light. Um, like it only gets dark around 5 is when like full sundown hits, whereas in Montreal during the dead of winter, it's really like 4:30.
Yeah, by like even like three something, like it's
Yeah,
starting to get kind of like evening light.
yeah. Montreal winters are extremely hard.
Yeah.
I feel like I have not. I mean, I've suffered through so many so consistently. It feels like, even disregarding the whole coronavirus situation, being able to skip out on Montreal winter is like really sweet, sweet life. Um, but even like I shouldn't gloat over how easy I have it here. But even during the holidays, like I live with several people, like family basically, and so my bubble is like includes like 3 other people, 3 to 5 other people, and even during the holidays I was able to spend time with people, so it's very hard being in your situation, I imagine. Like
You make the most of it. Like, I mean, this whole year, I think this is the most literature I've consumed in a single year. Like, I feel like I've learned so much in terms of like I'm the sort of person that really thrives in this self-directed learning environment. I think
yeah.
like when I'm doing it of my own accord, I'll just be like so curious about so many subjects and just like absorb like bodies of thought. Um,
How many
so
books
yeah,
did you read? How many books would you say that
geez,
you
I was
read
keeping
over?
track of it. It's a lot. Like I would say probably more than 50.
Wow,
Because like
very
I
good.
probably was reading at least a book a week. Now, I mean that's like varied because like some of the books were like quite a bit longer. Like I read like all 3 volumes of Capital, and for those of you familiar with Karl Marx's Capital, the first volume is like 1,000 pages. So I've read some books this year that were like several hundred pages in length, but then I also had some books that were like a single day read, basically, like just very
Right.
short, like concise little like manifestos and things like that.
Right. Yeah. What do you? Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to reading in the new year? Do you have anything on your list that you're going to be reading?
Here, I'm rereading most of like Deleuze right now. I'm just starting that because I actually like did the work last year and went back and read like Kant and all of the like more foundational texts that you're supposed to read before you read Deleuze. So I'm looking forward to like revisiting a lot of the postmodernist philosophy I read a few years ago with like an actual understanding maybe of like what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's going to take a while. I'm going to read the Grundrisse by Marx, I think, within the next few months. I've got a big text of Jacques Lacan I'm going to get to before too long. I've got a bunch of other stuff on various shelves. I'm looking around my room right now. But yeah, nothing too much. In terms of like more related to this podcast, I am quite curious to like once we've completed like the Endnotes corpus to like move to sort of like more contemporary leftist discourse because I feel like that's an area that I haven't done a lot of study in. I've like mostly like read like more foundational texts. So I see
Right.
that being something this year that's going to be interesting because I think especially within the last year, the global situation's changing pretty rapidly. So I think like keeping up with like new literature is going to be pretty important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Keeping up with contemporary writings on developments in anti-capitalist or workers' struggle is important, and theorization, that kind of struggle. That's getting into what we are going to be talking about here. That is kind of where I see this podcast going. Is as I said, eventually, not too far from now, we will be through the EndNotes corpus, at which point, the podcast will go through a rebranding. I have a name, um, like a short list, and, a tentative name chosen already for the show going forward, a name that we'll be able to, incorporate. That is not like tied to one kind of limited project. But yeah, going forward, I would like to, I think that the best function that we can serve here is to, because a lot of people are interested in things like contemporary, theory and literature and stuff, but there's so much of it, and life is so hectic. It really gets away from you, and before you know it, there's a new like essay from the new hot like communization group out, and it's hard to keep track of all of it. So I feel like one of the functions, also like not even counting like how people are not really able to read as well as they perhaps once were. But one of the functions that I see this podcast serving is, providing the service of reading literature and trying to like reformulate it, not in a like, I think that we've moved away a little bit. We're still developing as broadcasters, but we've moved away from just strictly moving through a text and like reformulating it point by point, and now we're trying to have more like free form conversations that are inspired by a text, still trying to like reformulate and represent it to an extent, but also trying to add something to the conversation. And I think that's where I see the podcast going in the future, is doing our part to like keep abreast of the literature, and like providing that service for people of like representing what is going on in these various essays that people are probably curious about. If they know about it, maybe don't have the time to read, or maybe they don't even know about it. So that's something that I'd like to do with the show going forward once we finish Endnotes. Yeah, what do you think of that, Owen?
Yeah, that's certain. I mean, I was saying this before we started recording, but like, as you know, I read quite a range of material, like some of it on the surface, not even like really pertinent to any sort of like political understanding. Like right now, I'm reading like evolutionary biology textbooks and things like that. Um, and I do feel like that it's crucial in your reading. If you want to read something well, like I think it really helps, or at least it really helps in my personal case, to try to interpret it and try to like reframe it in your own words and your own understanding, because that not only like consolidates it as like a working object in your mind, I think it's also in that like interpretation and like recommunication in your own words that like the discussion is actually like pushed further along and new ideas emerge. Like I forget who said it, but like there's this famous quote that like all of philosophy is just like a series of very extensive footnotes to Plato, which
Yeah.
is like an oversimplification, but also there's some truth to that. It's like, you know, these like schools of theory, schools of thought are just like continuously like building upon, deconstructing, and critiquing each other over time. And that's where like all the development happens. So I am looking forward to, as we move along with this project, getting better and better at like sort of interpreting things in our own way and putting our own kind of understanding on it. And like, I especially like when we get comments that are kind of doing that with our discussions, like adding another level of abstraction where someone who might not even have read the piece is reacting to what we said and putting their own spin on it. And then like we're reacting to that. And I think once you get that level of an actual like cyclic kind of like mutual discussion, that's when you can actually start to build something that's like greater than any one in person involved in the discussion could come up with on their own. Yeah,
Yeah,
something resembling a
absolutely.
community at that point.
Yeah, which I guess brings us to uh, our next point of discussion, which is the Patreon. Dun dun dun. We now have a
Dun, dun,
Patreon.
dun.
Finally, after we have, I was counting, we have like pretty close to 20 episodes. I mean, not counting the one that we had to scrap. We're talking like 18 or 19 episodes here. That's 18 or 19 weeks. And we still have not really had a Patreon throughout that entire period. I mean, I know in the YouTube descriptions, there's like a link to my personal Patreon, but it was always like billed as such as my personal Patreon. It's never something that we actually spoke about on the show. But now we have a Patreon, a place where listeners of the show can support us financially and contribute to the discussion and join in on the discussion. One of the perks that we are offering is a Discord server. We are building a community. That is something that I think both of us are interested in doing. I mean, I have some apprehensions about it that I'll get into, but yeah, something that I think we're both interested in doing is, you know, building a community of people who are, you know, thoughtful and like-minded, a place where we can have, you know, conversations, not always, you know, talking about, you know, philosophy or whatever, but, you know, just chat with people who are, you know, on a similar wavelength, but also a place where we can, you know, start doing like a collective research and start, you know, putting our heads together and in like a more with a greater range of people than just us two. So what we have is a Discord server. Before I get into that, I guess I'll give like a general overview of the Patreon. So the URL is patreon.com/ the inverted form. And the reason that it is my handle rather than, you know, the name of the podcast, first of all, the podcast name is contingent and it will change. um, but the other reason is that there are multiple tiers, and the tiers are associated with different projects. So the podcast is just one thing that I have ongoing. If you are watching this or listening to this on YouTube, you may know that I have a vlog there that I post on quite regularly, pretty much every day. I haven't posted for the last week or so, just been trying to take some time off. Um, but yeah, I have a vlog, so you can and I also have this show, and I'm also trying to build like this community where we'll eventually have, like we can have like just general chit chat or whatever, but we can also have like there's a goal set where at some point we'll have like kind of seminar discussions where we either decide collectively, or we can do the work of putting together some kind of syllabus, and then perhaps one of us, perhaps two of us will do a kind of a short lecture presentation on the material, the reading of the week, and then we'll join in on a seminar. Like, I know that people might be interested in this, but also not necessarily interested in engaging. Like, I want to provide the opportunity for people to get involved, but I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people do want to just consume the content. No judgment or anything, that's totally fine. That's what we're here to do, is provide content, provide audio material, educational, pedagogical, hopefully to some extent entertaining, or interesting material for people to listen to. So I want these discussions to in some way reflect both of those things, which I think is also reflected in our style of conversation. We try to reformulate the text, try to stay faithful to it and whatnot, but also try to have a kind of allow spontaneous conversations to bloom, which are more interesting to listen to in the moment. So anyway, that is kind of what we're trying to do here with the Discord, is builds a community of people just to chat, but then eventually get it to the point where we can start hosting these kind of group conversations, seminars that you can participate in. You'll be able to speak to us synchronously rather than have this kind of asynchronous parasocial kind of dynamic here. But also at the same time, people will still be able to listen and be able to get something out of it without necessarily having the pressure of needing to engage, or even needing to necessarily do some reading or whatever. So that is one level of the Patreon. We have three levels. There's $3 level where you can, like, everything is all kind of like a bit confusing, because everything is going to continue to be offered for free for the time being, as we are trying to build an audience. It doesn't make any sense for us to put anything behind any kind of paywall at this point, because we don't really know who's listening. And like, if we were to put something behind a paywall, then nobody would access it, and it wouldn't serve any purpose. So everything will be offered for free, but at the same time, we have three levels that are associated with three different rewards that will, in time, in the fullness of time, become exclusive. $3 level is associated with patronage of this community. It will eventually allow you to have access to this Discord server that eventually will be exclusive. For the time being, if you want in on the Discord, all you need to do is DM me. The link is not public. You just need to send me some kind of message, and you'll be invited to the server. You'll be able to participate. There's no pressure to contribute financially yet. And eventually, when we do achieve a certain level of contributors, then it will be made exclusive. So you will need to contribute financially in order to get access. But anybody who is already in will be kind of grandfathered in, and allowed to remain on the server. So there's the level tier, $3 tier, and then there's the $5 tier, which I'm associating with the podcast, supporting the podcast itself. Eventually, we will, again, once we get to a certain level of contributors, which will be like a sign that, you know, people are enjoying the show, people like what we're doing, people want more of it and are, you know, committed enough to contribute financially, then we will start doing a second episode on a more regular basis, on a more frequent basis. You know, ideally, we'll have 2 episodes a week. You know, standard, you know, podcast format. 2 episodes a week, one for free, one exclusively for patrons. So, you know, again, everything will be offered for free. We'll do the second episode as frequently as we can. They do take a lot of work, for me to like prepare for these interviews with people. You know, it does take a lot of time and effort. We have more interviews coming, very exciting. But yeah, so the $5 tier is associated with support for the podcast. You can just like, again, everything is for free, but you can kind of like, you know, put it in your head that you're getting exclusive access to this second episode. And then from there, we have the $10 tier, which is going to be associated with like this seminar discussion. You know, I've listed one of the rewards as like a second live stream, because on my YouTube channel I do live streams every week, every Sunday. But once we get to a certain level of a certain amount of supporters, then I'll be doing like a second live stream, just on the Discord, at a time chosen by the community. Um, I don't know if this is very clear. My presentation of the Patreon is very clear. It's because there are like several different projects that are ongoing, and some are like my projects, whereas some are like this show, for example, is shared with Owen. So basically, the thing that you need to the most important takeaway here is that you go to the patreon.com/ the inverted form, you sign up at $5 a month. That money will be split between Owen and I. It will, you know, signal to us that people are interested. And when we get to a certain amount of supporters, we'll start doing a second episode on a more frequent basis. It will give you access to a Discord community. And once we get enough people in the Discord, then I'll start doing a live stream just for people on the Discord. You know, whether or not that interests you, whatever. But basically, support the podcast. That is the most important takeaway. What do you think of all this, Owen?
Get those donations in, folks. No, like, I mean, there's two levels I'm looking at this at, like, in terms of like everything you just said. Like, obviously, in terms of like hosting and editing this podcast, like in terms of being like a presenter, definitely like the more people supporting it, the more time and resources like we can devote to this. Like, you know, I'm already spending like a significant amount of my free time just dedicated to research, but I think like it'd be good to be able to get like more proper recording equipment and to be able to spend like more time editing just interviews and scheduling interviews and reaching out to people, making these sorts of connections. But I think what really is interesting to me at this point, even more than that, is like in terms of like the greater political project that we're trying to facilitate here and like take part in, is like I'm interested in that community aspect. So the idea of having like an active Discord server of like a small but dedicated like group of people who are interested in this general line of thinking and are like communicating and discussing together, and you know, if anyone's so inclined, also doing research and like sort of expanding like the latent potential of what's being discussed here in terms of like, you know, the greater political questions that we've been exploring. To me, that's like the long term, like the real goal is to just sort of facilitate those discussions. So I think like if you're listening and you have any real interest in like the kinds of subject matter that we've been talking about in these podcasts, or like you know, that Mark talks about in his weekly videos, I'd say like, yeah, you should be interested in getting involved in whatever capacity that you can, even if it is just to like, you know, discuss and comment and like, you know, leave feedback on how you feel about things. Because I think having that sort of active like discussion between multiple people with distinct viewpoints, that's actually what helps an idea to develop. You know, it makes it less of like a static thing. It becomes less us just like reading pre-existing material and sort of regurgitating it back to you, and it becomes more of like an organic evolving movement, which is what you want. Like if you're interested in politics, like that's what you want. You want to like empower yourself in that way to actually feel like you're pushing forward some sort of idea, some sort of like transformative force in the world, whatever form that may take. Like it's all just latent right now. It
Right.
could be something real.
Yeah, it could be real by supporting us on Patreon. Basically, what you're saying is that by giving us money, that is a form of praxis. That is
Yeah.
anti-capitalist praxis. That is workers' struggles. By supporting at $5 a month, you too can, um, be a revolutionary.
Yeah,
That is your revolutionary
we'll send
practice.
you a Che Guevara T-shirt and like a poster of Chairman Mao's face
No,
if you
that
like.
is not.
No, we
That
won't actually
is
do that.
satire. That is not associated with any of
But
my
I mean,
works.
like, you know, the reality is that like even if you are an anti-capitalist, we're still in this system, so we can disavow capitalism as much as we want, but we need to take the intermediary steps. We need to like work ourselves out of the maze of capitalism.
Yeah, true enough, we do. And before we get there, we need to earn a living. This is an anecdote that I've related a few times on my YouTube channel's live stream when I've been kind of encouraging people to contribute financially. Is that I have no idea like if this is actually true or not. It's just something that I heard. But back in the day when Lenin was building his revolutionary party, he would get new people who wanted to join the party to give all of their assets to the party, not necessarily or not strictly because he needed the money for whatever it was that they were doing, but like Lenin was a committed revolutionary, obviously, and he only wanted other very committed revolutionaries to be involved with him at that early stage, especially like the point of getting these people to give all of their assets to the party was for them to go all in, to like commit their life to the cause, and to know that there is no going back, to know that they are a revolutionary in the most extreme and like dedicated sense. That is not what we are asking you. We're not asking you to give all of your assets to the podcast. We're not
Yeah.
asking you to like dedicate your life to this little Discord community here. We're asking you to show some level of engagement in the most like real sense that we have available to us in a capitalist society, which is financially. We're asking you to contribute financially to show us that people are interested and committed, and also for you to feel the same way, to feel
Mm.
kind of engaged with the project. um yeah, so that's what I have to say on that.
Also, if there's any nerds listening, like I mean like econ nerds, not like philosophy nerds like us. Uh someone teach me crypto, please. Teach me how to do
Oh
cryptocurrency
yeah,
so I can get free money off of Bitcoin. This is
this
one of my
is this,
2021 revolutions.
this is your email that you sent me last night. I mean, that is on my list of things to do for the show. I mean, first of all, I have to get us on iTunes. It's like ridiculous that we're not on iTunes yet. That's just fully my own fault. I have to like get us like a proper website. And also I need to open up a cryptocurrency wallet for the whole project so that people can contribute, using any number of cryptocurrencies. Yeah, I
Mm.
have like one follower of the channel who is from Iran, and he told me that he is not able to contribute to the Patreon because of US sanctions against Iran. Patreon and presumably a lot of other services like that, like financial services, that the only ones we have access to really, like PayPal, or even I don't really know too much about it, but like whether or not Canada has the same kind of sanctions, whether or not like an Iranian could presumably send me like a direct money transfer using like a, I don't know, some kind of like a financial institution, rather than going through one of these intermediaries like PayPal or Patreon or whatever. But basically, this person can't contribute financially because of their nationality, because of where they are in the world. It's kind of fucked up to think about.
Mm,
But that is where Bitcoin comes in.
yeah.
It can contribute through Bitcoin. Once we have a wall
Yeah.
open, then there'll be truly no excuse.
Yeah. Like, all joking aside, like, I do think that in like the coming years, like, it feels like the power structures of the 20th century going into the 21st century are on like increasingly tumultuous grounds. Like, I mean, obviously this is a big theme of the Endnotes journal, is like the tension growing within like the sort of power structure that we were all born into. And I think like as it becomes increasingly fragile, it's gonna like try harder and harder to like control any sort of like revolutionary dissent amongst its population. So I think, like, all that being said, I think things like cryptocurrency are going to be invaluable in the coming years as like a form of like currency and like the facilitation of like, transfer of like financial means to make projects happen that is outside of the direct control of like these like large corporations and like the established like states and global empires that sort of control all of the more mainstream currencies we're familiar with.
I mean, I'm a bit skeptical of that idea on like more abstract level. I don't think that a new currency is going to really solve any of the fundamental problems of currency in itself. But I do think that it is, a valid point that all of our financial transactions are mediated by private companies. Like disregarding the fiat currencies that we are sending back and forth, like Canadian dollars and US dollars and British pounds and euro and whatnot. Um, we can only really send those. Like, I don't think that a cryptocurrency is in some way better or more secure than any of those currencies that I just mentioned. But the problem with those currencies that I just mentioned is that they're mediated by corporations like PayPal and Patreon, which take a cut of whatever transaction is moving through the network, and are um, owned by vampires like Peter, what's his name?
Thiel? Peter
Thiel.
Thiel.
Peter Thule,
Thule,
fucking
yeah, I don't know how to
dark god.
pronounce.
But Peter Thiel,
Isn't he like
who's
the
a
right wing
literal
George
vampire.
Soros?
He's a fucking literal vampire. He puts like young people's blood into his veins. He's trying to get immortality.
Damn.
Um, so yeah, PayPal is like a company. Marx talks about capitalists as vampires. Some of these capitalist firms are run by literal vampires,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
Peter
Like, the
Thiel.
conspiracies are real,
Yeah.
folks. And I don't want to come off like a libertarian here, but or like an ANCAP or something, but like, I mean, obviously my long-term goal is to like facilitate the development of like post-capitalist, like post-currency kind of societies. But like I said earlier, this is like a process that requires intermediary steps. So my interest in things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is that currently, as far as I can tell, whatever power structure behind them is not nearly as powerful as the ones behind, say, the US dollar or PayPal or things like that. So like I feel like that sort of adds some leverage when you're dealing with these like alternative forms of currency. Like, they're not quite at the level of like global control empire just yet. So there might be some like short-term use value to them. It's at least something I'm doing research into. Like I can't say for sure, but like it feels worth like researching at this point.
Yeah, certainly a short-term use value, but yeah, all of the it's not good to be so reliant on all of these corporations, and even like getting beyond the tech corporations, your financial transactions are still mediated by like credit card companies, which still do the same kind of shit that like the tech corporations do. They still like shut people down based on their political views. I mean, it is most famously that kind of action is directed against like right wing people, but we cannot rest assured that it will remain that way forever. It's certainly we're seeing more and more crackdowns of this sort against left wing people as well. But there's that guy Jake Flores, I think his name is. I could totally be getting that wrong. I know him as like a person who he's like a very young online guy. Do you know who I'm talking about? Like the guy
No, I
who
don't think
came
so.
up with those plans, like 3D printing plans for like guns and like
Oh,
disseminate
okay. I've
them
heard
on
about
the
the
internet.
3D printed guns and things like that. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen.
he
I have not seen the
came up with
plans
that.
because they're illegal, of course. But,
Yeah, or whatever. I don't even know if they are legal, but yeah, he came up with that, and like he had like a Patreon or something, and like he got shut down not even by a tech company, but he got shut down by a credit card company. So he was not able to like get, I don't know, any kind of financial support. um I don't really know too much about him. Maybe that's not, I think he's like on the libertarian kind of reactionary side.
mm.
um but yeah, I don't know, we can't.
I mean, I do think like my understanding is that like there's increasing censorship of any sort of political. Like a few years ago, it was mostly just like actual fascists who were getting shut down, but like I think now like even more like kind of you know from the point of view of the mainstream extreme leftist views, like even like libertarians and stuff. Like there's a lot of like figures in all directions, let's say, that are being like increasingly like silenced by corporations that just want to ensure like stability of the current order.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think realistically that we have anything to worry about, at least not anytime soon. We're a very small profile show, and we're basically like reading philosophy. They're much like higher profile shows that say more dangerous things. Um, and, even on the left, and they don't really have, I don't think that we have much to worry about in terms of this show getting like censored or shut down. Maybe like shadow banned on YouTube or something is the worst that we could like fear or whatever. But anyway, so just to reiterate what we've been talking about, support us on Patreon, $5 a month, even if you, or $3 a month, or $10 a month, whatever. If you can't support us, still send me a DM on any social media, the inverted form across the board, and I'll send you a link to the Discord. We're very glad to have you if you're interested. Um, oh, and you're gonna have to get on that, by the way.
Yeah. Send me the Discord link so that I can actually be on the Discord that
um,
we're advertising.
yeah. Also for the interviews and whatnot, we have one scheduled. I have been kind of holding off. I don't know, just over the like second half of the last month on like making new, sending out new invites and whatnot, just because it felt kind of weird to be doing that like right around the holidays. But new year, I'm going to be reaching out to a lot
Mm.
of people. I have a lot of people in mind that I want to talk to. I think I'm a pretty decent interviewer. Like I do a lot of preparation, and I think everything has, the two that I've done so far have gone quite well. I'm pretty proud of them. So if you got something out of those, if you learned something from those, and you want to see me do more of that, then I really would ask you to contribute to the Patreon, because that does take a long time. I read like a lot of academic literature, like I'm interviewing academicians, professors mostly. Um, on most other like podcasts who are in the general space that we're in, like the guests that they have on tend to be more often than not journalists or like social media people, even on the more like theoretical kind of leftist podcasts. They tend to be people of that sort, and the conversations tend to be quite informal and generally chit chatting around a certain theme, whereas the interviews that I've been doing have been, with people who are doing research in certain areas that I'm interested in that is relevant to the topic of the show. And, in order to like get the most out of that interview, I've had to like read their work and, spend a lot of time coming up with like good questions to, both allow them the opportunity to like present their work and like what it is about, and then also try to like expand on it and like probe it and like get deeper into it, as best as I'm able to. Anyway, that takes a lot of work. If you like that content, if you want more of it, then please do contribute to the Patreon. Be very much appreciated. But I guess, do we have anything else that we need to talk about here before we actually move on to talking about end
No,
notes?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's get into it. So we're
Let's get
finally
into it.
breaking off end notes for after many special bonus
Mm,
episodes. We're going
very
back
special.
to what this podcast is about. We both have our paper copies here.
We
Very
actually both have
nice.
like a paper copy, which is cool.
Yeah,
I'm still a fan of like, actual books.
yeah. The
This one's a very
cover is
well
like
designed
some
one. It has like a cool
buildings.
like urban photo. It looks
Yeah,
kind of
there's like a
photoshopped, but
slip.
it's still
There's
pretty
a slip
cool.
jacket, and then the book itself
Yeah.
is a kind of like beigey, kind of brown color.
For those of you who have not actually ever seen like a copy of Endnotes, they do put a lot of like work into like the physical presentation of their books. Like if you've enjoyed the content, like don't just support us. Like go buy copies of like the Endnotes journals because like they're well worth having. You can tell they put a lot of
Yeah,
care into these things.
yeah, they're very well designed. And Notes 5 especially is they really took the design to the next level with I don't know, the layout and the font, and like there's some nice colored pages and whatnot. Anyway, it says here on the back flap that the photo on the cover is from Priet Igo, St. Louis, 1955.
Oh, okay. So it's
And it's
probably
for Chris. I wonder who Chris is.
maybe it's maybe it's Chris Chen, known writer of
No,
uh
he's not dead. So I feel like if it's
oh
for somebody, it would be for somebody. I feel like it might be Chris Chitty, who is a guy who may have died around this time. I'm not
very
sure when he died,
possible.
but yeah, he just a posthumous work of his was just published this year, "Sexual Hegemony," edited by Max Fox. Maybe we'll get him on the show sometime. But anyway, and that's five. So we've got an editorial. We've got Brown v. Ferguson. This is from October 2015. And notes four. Sorry, what did I say? October 2015. Editorial Brown v. Ferguson. A History of Separation. Very long essay, 100 pages. Gather us from among the nations, its own peculiar decor, an intake from Mr. Chris Wright, and then finally an identical abject subject question mark.
Mm,
So
which
I'm thinking we'll do editorial now, we'll do Brown v. Ferguson, and then this long essay will break into 3 episodes. We'll do the first 2 parts, then we'll do the next 3 parts, then we'll do the last 2 parts, and then the rest of the essays on their own. So that's 8 episodes, and then there will be bonus episodes published along the way, interviews and whatnot with people that I've people that I'm talking to, but try to get Chris Wright and try to get more members of the Endnotes collective
Mm.
on. So the editorial, it's there's honestly not that much in this editorial. It's really
Yeah, it's
just
like 10
reiterating.
pages.
Yeah, it's 10 pages. It's kind of reiterating the general vibe of Endnotes 3, which was that, and the what was said, particularly in the essay "The Holding Pattern" from Endnotes 3. Basically, um, the system is definitely unsustainable. It's definitely
Yeah,
going down, and there's no real way that it can that the downward trajectory can be averted. Politicians are scrambling for any kind of measure that they can think of to uh, course correct the economic downward spiral using techniques like quantitative easing and all kinds of like debt relief and all kinds of technocratic bullshit.
yeah,
But
technocratic
there's
bullshit.
there's no hope for any of it. It's all doomed. And then from there, it talks a little bit about some of the actual like content of the essays that we'll be looking at. The intake from Chris Wright, and then the history of separation. I'm quite excited about. It's basically about the rise and fall of the workers' movement from the mid 19th century up until the 1980s. I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to
Yeah,
be
that
some
one
yeah
sounds. I think like a central theme that's come up in like Endnotes and related sort of communization adjacent literature that we've been reading is this idea that like you can't really like affirm like a positive workers movement identity anymore owing to like the particularities of the present situation, and that like there's only a limited degree of like praxis you can draw from previous workers movements, no matter how successful they might have been at like their particular moment in history. So if this is indeed sort of a more in-depth history of that evolution, or shall we say de-evolution, like I feel like I could get a lot out of reading that one.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be some classic endnotes, very like rigorous, very historical, a lot of footnotes. Yeah, just very educational stuff. A lot of like good research going into that, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it and learning from it and being able to talk about it with you, Owen, and with our
Nice.
listeners who
Yeah, well,
joined in on the
hopefully
conversation.
before we're done the end of this volume, we'll actually have some people kicking around on the Discord, and
Yeah,
maybe there will be some more organic discussion going on.
yeah.
Who
Brown
knows?
v
It's very exciting.
Ferguson. It seems to be. It's pretty lengthy. It's like 60 pages. It's going to be, I guess, about you know Ferguson, which was happening around this time.
Yeah, which is like, I
Wave of
think this
riots.
volume, are we going to say?
I was saying that in case anybody has forgotten what Ferguson refers to, it's a massive wave of riots in the city of Ferguson in what, Minnesota? I don't know. I'm not.
Somewhere like the middle of the United States.
Yeah. Anyway, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
think this volume, as far as I can tell, I haven't read it yet, but it's gonna like somewhat like trace the origins of like the Black Lives Matter movement, which came into like, from what I recall, it came into prominence around the time they would have been writing this volume of Endnotes. And I
I
think
think
it
so. Yeah.
really like became like a massive force in the United States, at least political landscape, and like, to some degree, the global political landscape in 2020. I'd say like maybe like after the coronavirus and the 2020 US election, like I'd say that like the protest wave of the summer 2020 in the United States was probably like one of the bigger political events, at least like on the North American content, certainly, if not globally. And Black Lives Matter was like a central like player in that. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of go back and look at like the origins of like this most recent like sort of movement, which is obviously like a much longer decades / centuries long like political trajectory, but like, you know, focusing strictly on like the events of the last decade. So I think they get into that to some degree in this volume.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to it. And then this last essay, an identical abject subject.
Yeah.
It seems to be kind of following up on our favorite essay, Misery
Mm-hmm.
and Debt. I think that in Endnotes too, they referenced like how there would be a follow up, and I think it's here.
Yeah, which is certainly like in terms of like the strictly like theoretical like pieces of Endnotes, like not so much the like more historically contingent ones. Like it's definitely the one that we go back to the most and reference the most, that
Yeah.
like kind of crystallizes basically like, you know, the nexus of Endnotes project.
Yeah, it's not credited to Aaron Beniniv, who wrote Misery and Debt, but maybe it's because like at this point he was like officially a member of the collective or something. I don't know. But it says that it's based on a talk given in Berlin, and it's based some of the arguments in sections 2 and 3 draw on Aaron Beniniv, A Global History of Unemployment, forthcoming. It was that book was only published this year, so that book was in the works for 5 years. Wow. Well, that's all we have to say. I mean,
Yeah, there's not
looking
much
forward
to this
to
editorial.
yeah, we're looking forward to getting into Endnotes 4. We're looking forward to talking to some more people who are interested in the show. We're looking forward to a bright new year. Got
Yeah.
a lot of goals set. I set my Goodreads goal because on Goodreads you can like set your reading goals for the year. I set it to 175 books just as a joke.
Damn, that is
I'm going to be reading Phenomenology of the Spirit over the next few months. But anyway, yeah, look forward to our next episode when we actually talk about something more meaningful.
yeah.
That'll be coming out next Monday.
It's gonna be the
Until
Brown
then,
versus Ferguson episode.
yeah, until then, you can find us on Discord. Again, go to patreon.com/the inverted form and contribute at $3, $5, or $10 a month. Other rewards are forthcoming. It's really about building a base of financial supporters before we start offering any kind of exclusive perks. But yeah, your contributions will be very, very much appreciated. They're really important to this show ongoing. And even if you're not able to support or not willing to, then send me a DM on Twitter, on Goodreads, on Letterboxd. I have a Reddit account you can send me a message on. You can email me. My email is on my website. There are many different ways that you can get in touch with me. I'm sure you can figure out
4chan.
how. No, that's anonymous. I don't know there. But yeah, just drop me a line and I'll send you the invite link to the Discord. We'd be happy to have you.
Yeah.
But yeah, until then, see you next time.
See you next time, folks.